Now, lockdown has been hard for everyone, but we're now starting to just find out how it really has affected different groups of people. And one charity called Just Like Us, so they've been focusing on how young LGBT plus people, that's lesbian, gay, bisexual and transgendered young people, are feeling at the minute. And their findings, they're quite alarming in terms of where we live. They say it seems LGBT plus people here in the northeast are the loneliest in the country. Dominic Arnell is the CEO of the charity. He told me what they've been trying to find out.
I guess over the past year we've been really concerned about the impact of the pandemic on LGBT plus young people. Obviously the last year has been difficult for everybody because we're all going through this pandemic. But we know from our experience that LGBT plus young people particularly tend to rely on relationships that sit outside of the family unit. And many of them will be living with family who are not aware of their identity or don't accept it. So we commissioned a survey of almost 3,000 secondary school pupils, over 1,000 of which were LGBT+, looking specifically at their experiences during lockdown. And what it found is that LGBT+ people are more than twice as likely to worry about their mental health on a daily basis, and 7 in 10 LGBT+ young people say their mental health has worsened since the pandemic began.
Some really sad and shocking statistics for the northeast as well.
Absolutely, yes. In fact, in England, it was most acute in the northeast.
And we're talking about things like northeast LGBT plus young people, the loneliest in England, over half, that's 57% of LGBT plus young people in the northeast reporting feeling lonely and separated. Why is that? Did you find any reasons for that specifically to this region?
The difficulty with research is often you find out the what, but getting to the why is even more difficult. We did have some of the individuals that spoke up as part of the research talked about being in very rural locations anyway, and that being a contributing factor to feeling lonely. We found that there were people in the northeast that were more likely to rely on transport. So, for example, would go for a night out further away from their home under normal circumstances, and obviously since the pandemic have not been able to. But it is very difficult to say conclusively what the reason that the northeast was so different from the rest of the country is. It's so difficult because we hear about LGBT plus people now all the time. I think that leads people to believe that everybody's sort of okay, and I think what this research really clearly demonstrates is that they're not.
Well, Joel Groves is 26 and trans. He was raised in Sunderland. I asked him to tell me how he felt living here affected his life growing up.
I did hear sort of LGBT plus identities used growing up, but it was always in the context of slurs. I never heard it talked about as an actual identity or, something that was possible for me to be until I was 18 and I moved to Newcastle, where I met friends in the university's LGBT plus societies who were using these terms as positive words.
Right.
And that was, completely different to what I'd heard growing up.
So when you'd heard terms like gay, maybe, or trans, basically they were being thrown around as insults?
Yeah, as in it was something that you shouldn't be.
Yeah.
That it couldn't be a good thing. I'd always kind of known that I wasn't the little girl that I was being told I was, but I didn't know that I was trans because I'd never heard the word. I'd never heard, that it was possible to be something other than the gender that you were. So I was just confused about myself. Yeah. It wasn't until that I heard this word in a positive way and was able to ask questions about it and explore it that I realised that these things corresponded with what I've been feeling my whole life. I felt actually incredibly lucky to be able to come out to my immediate friends and family quite readily, but it took me a very long time to be able to feel confident coming out socially at work and just out on the street, that kind of thing.
What sort of support did you get?
I was really, really lucky that straight away my partner, my sister and my parents in particular straight away asked what names and pronouns would I like them to use and asked if there was anything they could do to support me. I think it was difficult for them in a way that they have no idea that I've been struggling this way, but overwhelmingly they just wanted to make me happy, even if they didn't really understand.
But you say it took a little while to tell other people. What sort of other people, what other circles are we talking about there?
To be able to come out at work, to feel confident in correcting people who misgendered me in public, to be able to present myself in a more masculine manner walking down the street or, going out for food. If a waiter would collectively call our group girls, I would just shrink it and I wouldn't say, well, actually, it felt very difficult to do that.
You mentioned earlier in the conversation about being at school and these terms being used in a derogatory way. Were you bullied at school?
I was, yeah. I presented in, I guess you would call it an androgynous fashion, because I didn't realise that I was trans, but I did not feel comfortable presenting as a little girl would typically be expected to either. So I presented in a way that felt comfortable. I had quite short hair. I wore quite masculine clothing. I was labelled a tomboy quite a lot. Not that there was anything wrong with that, but at school it did open me up for bullying. I remember quite distinctly being followed around by a group of older girls who would quite loudly ask, is that a boy or a girl? Now it kind of makes me laugh, but, at the time it was just devastating.
Yeah. I mean, did you talk to your family about that? Did you talk to anyone in your family about how you were feeling?
No, I never did, because I knew that my family loved me and probably that they would have supported me, but growing up it was just such a traditional culture of gender norms, and at school I was only hearing bad things, that there was just always that overriding, well, yeah, they love me, but surely there's got to be a point on that, and surely if I'm not a girl, that could be that limit. And I kind of would talk a little bit about being bullied, but the message that I would always get back would be, well, even though you're a girl, it's fine if you want short hair, or it's fine if you want to play football or whatever. So it was still being enforced that you are a girl.
Well, that's Joel Groves. We're going to hear more from Joel shortly. If any of what he said has chimed with you, has resonated, let me know. Do you think the North East is a harder place to grow up for LGBT plus young people? You're always welcome to give us a call. It's 0800 234 6534 6534 6534 6534.